Now I would like to say a few words about Brother Clayton James Woodworth. He held a high position in the Jehovah's Witnesses during the Russell and Rutherford eras. He died in 1951, but there is no direct mention in the literature of the organization of his position under Nathan nor. Keep in mind, however, that according to the organization's solid understanding of modern times, Jesus appointed a faithful slave in 1919, which this Brother Woodworth was definitely a part of. Although this is the interpretation of the Jehovah's Witnesses, let's draw this conclusion as if it were true. In 1913, Brother Woodworth had been a member of the International Society of Bible Students for 15 years, as Jehovah's Witnesses were then called, and he was already in a very high position. Next, you will hear an experience he himself told at the 1913 Bible Students' Convention. I have translated this experience into Finnish for this video. The experience can be found in the organization's publication called Souvenir Notes Bible Students' Conventions from the year 1913. The link to this file can be found in the description box of the video, where I put the other sources I discuss in this video. I wish to speak to you of something that I certainly never intended mentioning at this convention. I presume you have all taken the vow, but perhaps some of you have not. The Lord has placed something upon my heart I would rather not tell you about, for I do not like to talk about my troubles, but the settling of this simple little matter of the vow has probably caused me 100 times more suffering than all the other experiences of my life put together. With me, the vigorous opposition to the vow was not a case of having any grouch against Brother Russell or anybody else, but a case of having too much confidence in myself, in my own judgment. When it first came out, certain matters were said to me in such a way as to place the vow in an unfavorable light. I looked up what scriptures I could find on the subject, and they slid not appeal to me. I said, "This is something Brother Russell has brought up of himself, and I will never accept it unless I find it in the scriptures." Then began my troubles. I began to pray and to fight it in my own way with the scriptures. After a few months, the scriptures apparently began to open up more and more on this subject, demonstrating its unscripturalness. I thought that this was to he a great test upon the Lord's people, and that Brother Russell was wrong, and I saw clearly wherein he was wrong. I wrote letter after letter to him, not less than 50 pages on the subject. When I now think how patient he was, I condemn myself, and I know it will be a lesson that will last me certainly to the end of the harvest time. I must have made the brother suffer, for naturally I am quite pointed in my correspondence, and never spared the point. Well, the matter went on. There was a time for 5 consecutive nights when I never slept a wink. Then came a time when the strain was too much. My mind became unbalanced, and I came directly under the influence of evil spirits. So much so that for 3 days I was as completely under demonical control as was Mrs. Eddy when she wrote Science and Health. Mary Baker Eddy was an American religious leader, Christian healer, and author, who in 1879 founded the Church of Christ, scientist, the mother church of the Christian Science movement. Her most famous work was Science and Health, which was apparently written under the guidance of some divine inspiration. And this is what Brother Woodworth was referring to in his speech. By the way, when you really think about this, how many Jehovah's Witnesses today would publicly tell of being possessed by evil spirits, and tell it in front of thousands of people in a convention? Or even to have one's own experience told by a speaker who is a very high-ranking brother, even a member of a governing body. Okay, but now let's get back to the experience. Previous to this time, I had prepared a 36-page book against the vow, printed in double column, in which all scriptures which seemed to be directly or indirectly against the vow were arranged. I know now that all these scriptures were suggested to my mind by the evil spirits. One of the suggestions was that Brother Russell was doing this to compel the truth people to do just as he said in everything. Another was, and this I believe was a truth, for these lying spirits do sometimes tell the truth, that in the 15th chapter of Numbers where it mentions the ribband of blue, it had reference antitypically to the vow. But then these lying spirits turned the truth into a lie by claiming that the vow had been suggested to Brother Russell by the evil spirits. See how clever they were. It is not necessary for me to go into details. Brother Russell came to my house. I was sane on other matters, but not on this, notwithstanding I had walked in the light for 15 years. We talked for an entire day, and he pointed out about halfway through the book where I had made a mistake. Until then, I was so blind and deceived and foolish as to imagine the Lord had raised me up to set Brother Russell straight way down in the end of the harvest. But in the middle of this book, which I intended to give out to the different congregations, I found a mistake, and though I could not even then comprehend that I had been misled by evil spirits, I knew there was something wrong somewhere and took the books all out to the banks of the river and burned them. That was a good burning. For 2 years or more I suffered in my fellowship with the brethren almost the tortures of the damned. Those were trying times in the church, not only for me but for others, but the Lord helped me in connection with the comments in the back of our Bible, for when other brothers and sisters went to pieces on doctrine I did not go with them. In connection with the covenants, I remembered matters which helped to keep me straight. I tried to hang on until finally at the Souvenir convention I said, "Here, all these people look the same as in the past. They seem to be enjoying the truth as much as ever, and here I am, putting up a bluff, for in my heart I am unhappy. I know what I am going to do. If I feel the same a week later, I am going to take the vow anyway. Could not make me feel worse than I do now. It is worth trying. Anyway, until then I had never settled in my mind that Brother Russell was that servant. I said, if the scriptures do refer to a special individual servant in the end of the age, then Brother Russell must be that servant. But I never settled the matter until I yielded and took the vow which he has advised all the Lord's saints to take. Well, I went home from that Souvenir convention and wrote myself a letter, 28 arguments, in favor of the vow and put it in the vault and left it for a week to see whether I would still feel like taking it, and I then took the vow. For 2 years, I had practically been cut off from any service in connection with the harvest work. The very next Sunday, as I was unexpectedly down in North Carolina on a business trip, the friends at Henderson asked me to speak. I had some notes in my pocket I had been carrying for about 2 years. I used those notes. The next Sunday I was in New Jersey, and a committee came to me from the Camp Meeting Association, asking me to give an address, and I used those same notes. The next Sunday I was at Knoxville, Tennessee. Brother Russell was to have been there, but did not arrive in time, and the dear brethren asked me to give the opening address, and I used the same notes. The next Sunday I was back in Dover, NJ, and used the same notes, and since then I have been as busy in the Lord's work as I could wish. Does this experience appeal to you? I want to urge you, dear brothers and sisters, to carefully note numbers 1539 and put on the ribband of blue, the pledge of faithfulness, and not suffer as I did in going a-whoring after your own wisdom. I firmly believe that this ribband of blue is the vow and inspired of God for his people in this evil day. If you have not taken it, take it, for a great blessing will come to you from taking it. If you have not taken it, there is grave reason to fear that some of the fleshly mind is still there. God would be a poor shepherd to bring us into the truth and then allow that one whom he has raised up as a faithful and wise under shepherd in this evil day to go into darkness. It is not like God. It is like God to stand by his servant as in the past. He has always stood by those he has specially used. I hope the Lord will bless this testimony. Then we move on to another issue, which also concerns Brother Woodworth. He was one of the brothers who wrote the 7th volume of Russell's Studies in the Scriptures, The Finished Mystery. This book explains the book of Revelation and the book of Ezekiel verse by verse. Brother Woodworth wrote the commentaries on Revelation, and Brother Fisher wrote the commentaries on Ezekiel. And now I'll quote the next passage from that book, The Finished Mystery, where Brother Woodworth explains Revelation 7 verse 3. Notice especially how he describes the struggle the Christian faces when demonic forces get a hold of his mind. Have you enjoyed this work so far? Are you convinced it is of the Lord, prepared under his guidance? Have you carefully and prayerfully read the comments on Revelation 7 verse 1? Then brace yourself for the truth that it is evidently God's purpose soon to allow the minds of many of his little ones to become an open battleground, upon which the fallen angels shall be judged, and the manner in which we meet the tests will prove our worthiness of crowns at the same time that it proves these disobedient spirits unworthy of life on any plane. This is something with which some but not many are yet familiar. Without actual experience, it is quite impossible to conceive of the intensity of such struggles. The base of the brain is seized as in a vice. Interpretations of Scripture, ingenious but misleading beyond description, are projected into the mind as water might be projected through a hose. Visions may be tried, wonderful illuminations of the mind as by a soft but glorious greenish or yellowish haze. Seductive suggestions may be made, based on circumstances of the environment. Offers of inspiration may be made. The privilege of sleep may be taken away for days at a stretch. All this with the object of forcing the unfortunate into at least a temporary insanity so as to destroy his influence and, if possible, his faith in God. Failing in all other attempts, the mind may fooled with thoughts that are vile beyond description. Then remember the vow. Brother Woodworth wrote this interpretation of Revelation a few years after he had publicly testified at a convention about his own experience of being under the influence of demons. He said that, without actual experience, it is quite impossible to conceive of the intensity of such struggles, of which he spoke here. So most obviously he was talking about his own experience of being under the power of demons. So either Brother Woodworth was lying through his teeth, or he really was possessed by evil spirits. It was either or. Neither of these is a good option. And as for this book, The Finished Mystery, which at the time was distributed in millions of copies around the world, was, according to the organization, still in 1988 a powerful commentary on Revelation and Ezekiel. But then, in 2000, the organization completely changed its view. At the Watchtower on March 15, 2000, it was openly admitted that, in general, the explanation offered in that volume of studies in the Scriptures was hazy. Would it not have happened that both of these gentlemen, Brother Woodworth and Brother Fisher, who wrote the explanations of the finished mystery, were under the direction of some spirit entirely other than the Holy Spirit of God? Or how else is it to be explained that these brothers, who were at the head of the organization at the time, belonged to what might be called a faithful slave, and yet managed to produce a book with explanations that were hazy? I recommend that you download your own copy of this book and see for yourself how silly those explanations are from beginning to end. I have made several videos in Finnish, apologies to my English viewers, of the book, which I recommend you listen to if you don't have the time to go through it yourself. Brother Woodworth had a long career at Jehovah's Witnesses headquarters. In 1912, he became a member of the Watchtower Society and the Bethel family in Brooklyn. In May 1918, he was imprisoned with other key members of the Watchtower Society. On June 21, 1918, 7 of the 8 accused were sentenced to 20 years in prison. As a result of the Explorers' campaign for release, Clayton J. Woodworth and the other prisoners were released on bail on March 25, 1919, by order of U.S. Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis. He served for many years as editor-in-chief of the Golden Age, later called Consolation and Awake. He died in 1951 at the age of 81. You can either leave a comment on this video or write to me with your thoughts. My email address is the same as always. Just hang in there, and let's try to stay safe from the influence of evil spirits.